Hi everybody, Sunday afternoon, Facebook Live, good to see you. Today's topic is coercive control. So coercive control is a form of control that often feels like love. There can be passion and companionship that exists alongside threats, punishment and manipulation. It's said that the most effective form of control is coercive control because the victim will often simply amend their own behaviour through intimidation and fear. So it leaves the abuser in a situation where they have what we call plausible deniability. They can deny that they're actually doing anything to control that other person, and it seems entirely plausible because the person who is the victim of it has willingly changed their behaviour without anybody actually asking for that behaviour to be changed. Over a period of time, it can really, change the person. It can create a situation where they suffer from learned helplessness. It takes away their autonomy and their belief in themselves in regards to being able to change situations. And it's again one of the things that actually leads to people staying in toxic relationships. So coercive control can be anything from a set of overt and rigid rules that you're expected to live by. Oftentimes they'll actually be stated as being, that both parties will be following these rules. But the reality is that they tend to be applied unequally, so more to one person than to the other. So that's sort of that overt and rigid sort of set of rules, but that can also go all the way through to like an unspoken expectation that might have sort of unwritten consequences. So emotional fallout, for instance, like silence or the cold shoulder or anger. But again, they may not actually be overt and upfront about why they're angry or why they don't want to talk. It's more just a case of like an emotional punishment for something. So coercive control often begins with promises extracted from one person, family comes first, or we must always put each other first in the relationship. Or even emotionally loaded and manipulative statements like, we only have each other. So the thing about coercive control is it often relies on emotional manipulation. And again, that other person going along voluntarily because their emotions are being tugged at, if you like, fear, obligation and guilt being the three big ones, or fog as we call it. Coercive control is often really subtle. It's not always an overt way of controlling someone. It's insidious and it's often, ongoing over a long period of time in a relationship, and it destroys the free will of that person and their personal autonomy over a period of time. So they may start by pushing back against that coercive control, but they quickly learn that the consequences aren't worth it, and so they'll actually then start to amend their own behaviour because they don't want to have the silent treatment or the emotional fallout that will happen in the hours and days afterwards. One of the things that we do see are little tests of loyalty. So, the person who's doing the coercive control will make that other person choose between, whatever it is they had planned. They'll suddenly have some urgent needs that other partner has to attend to, whether that be work, or family or some other planned activity. That other partner will have this urgent need that needs to take priority. And if you've already extracted this promise of we always put each other first, then you can see how that can become quite a controlling behaviour when this person suddenly has some kind of urgent or dramatic, need for you to be with them. Coercive control is often seen in the area of sex. The partner may seem to take no for an answer. So say, for instance, a couple, are having sex, one person approaches the other to have sex and they get turned down. Now, in most healthy relationships, that's okay. That would be understood. But this person will seem to take no for an answer at the time. possibly, and either sulk in the aftermath, maybe not even till the day after, or the next day they might start to query things like, why am I no longer desirable to you? Are you having an affair? Is that why you don't want to have sex with me? And then accusations will often come after that. And what will often happen is it will result in that person deciding it's just easier to give in and have sex because, the other person is seemingly insecure after being told no, or, this constant questioning around, you must be having an affair, are you having an affair? So that's one of the more common ways that we would actually see coercive control used. But there are literally hundreds and hundreds of others. And, they're as unique as the two people in the relationship. So one thing that I will say about it is if coercive control works once, they'll often revisit that tactic or technique multiple times, either in different situations or applying it in the same situation again and again. I'm just going to give you some other examples of the types of things that we've seen in coercive control. And just remember, if one tactic doesn't work, they'll often move on to another tactic. So they'll keep trying until they find one that works, okay? But the basis of coercive control is that two people in the relationship, their needs are not considered equally. It's not a reciprocal relationship. Sometimes the second party may appear to be reciprocating or giving that other person what they want, but it's usually used in a way to control them or get something that they want. So that it's not true reciprocity from that perspective. It's still designed as a manipulative tactic to get something that they want in return. So, examples might be that, someone's monopolizing the other person's time and energy. They might make all the rules or the big decisions in the relationship. So the power dynamic is very one-sided. They might be too tired to do things or too busy at work, or maybe even just exclude them from what's going on at work or elsewhere in their life. Things like pressuring somebody to move in early in a relationship also falls under that sort of one-sided power dynamic. And the other thing that you might hear is, if you loved me, you would do it. If you loved me, you wouldn't do that. If you loved me, you would do this. Those kinds of mind games are often used as well. Another thing that they often do is they'll cut off time and attention, care. So it's almost like they've got a switch where they can just switch off their ability to care for this person. And again, it's about making that other person feel lost, unloved, uncomfortable. So, it's an emotional type of blackmail. So manipulative moodiness also falls under that heading as well. And that withdrawing of, care. These people can often be charming in public, but quite abusive and controlling in private. So that double persona is something that you'll see. Another thing that might happen is, they block you from communication. So, they say something and you want to go back and clarify, and they go, no, I don't want to discuss it. And they shut down the ability to interact and clarify or have conversation. And they'll say something along the lines of, I've got the right to not have to discuss this. I don't have to justify myself on this. It's really quite controlling because it's not a two-way dialogue. Again, one person holding the bulk of the power in that interaction is what to look out for. Sometimes they'll restrict movement, discourage them from having their own interests, taking time to go to church or pursue their own creative practices or spiritual practices. They'll often monitor whereabouts, so checking up on where they are, calling at work, text messages, that kind of thing as well. Demanding that they come straight home from work is another one that you might see. You might see that they demand loyalty from them, and then question them or berate them for not being as loyal as they believe they should be. Sometimes they'll do things like calling their friends, like derogatory comments about their friends and family, that kind of thing, attempting to turn friends and family against them. Requiring that relationship issues be kept within the relationship, that there's no ability to discuss that with a close friend or with a family member. No, we must keep our dirty laundry in-house, that kind of comment. Maybe they'll drop them to or from work even, so that they can monitor that they're actually at work. They'll often be very overprotective and seemingly caring. Again, this is where they use that guise of being caring. Frequently phoning at work, unexpectedly popping into work, maybe around lunchtime. Try to keep them at home. Tell them that they're worried about them. Perhaps not wanting them to travel for work because they're worried about them. I'm worried about the other women that you might meet. You might have an affair, or I'm worried about you going to that dinner, that work function, because you might meet somebody there who's more attractive, younger, more beautiful, whatever. So those kinds of things. They'll often monitor phone messages, that kind of thing. And, they'll extract, a promise, that it's fair that I check your phone for some reason. Checking emails, checking banking, checking online movements, so search engines, what you visited on the web, that kind of thing. Those are all very coercively controlling, because they're not overt, not going to tell you can't do this, but I'm going to check up on you afterwards, and then I'm going to question you about it and emotionally punish you. Might do things like harassing or teasing or tormenting, monitoring, stalking, intimidating, all of those kinds of things in public, or in front of family and friends, that kind of thing. Sending messages to other friends and family and questioning them about your behaviour, or questioning them about, or perhaps, making accusations to those people. I think he's having an affair. Do you know anything? Those kinds of things as well. So those are some of the coercive types of things. Cyberbullying is a big one, monitoring passwords, insisting that you have passwords to all of their cyber activity, tampering with emails, checking sent and deleted folders, checking, as I said, phones and things, telling them who they're allowed to be friends with on social media, or even acting jealous. Maybe they don't overtly say you can't be friends with this person, but what they might do is then, again, the emotional fallout is so great. Remember, coercive control is often not overt. It's often more along the lines of the emotional manipulation afterwards, So the fallout is so great that you amend your own behaviour. And that is the most powerful kind of control of all, because you've amended your own behaviour and the other person gets to pretend like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have a problem. I didn't ask you to do that. There's all sorts of things like, lots of unwelcome text messages and phone calls and voice messages, they kind of fall under stalking behaviours. Another thing, we call it doxing. You may never have heard of this, but this is trawling the internet to locate every type of personal information around that person. Whether there be media articles or personal contact details or geographical locations, that kind of thing. So you're following and you're monitoring their online movements. Signing into someone's social media accounts, chat forums and other social network sites to check up on them. To then make comment about, who's making comments on your social media, you're too close to that person. I don't like, that was a very suggestive comment. You need to cut them off. They shouldn't be, they're too friendly. We don't want that kind of thing happening. This person will often withhold care and respect, approval, affection and support, as I've said previously. Act like the other person doesn't matter. And dismisses the other person if they complain about anything. and will act as though I don't know what you're talking about. That's a form of gaslighting. So I don't know what you're talking about, or, you know, you're overly sensitive, or, you know, that's not what I said, I never asked you to do that, that kind of thing. Sort of trying to change the story and make you believe that something that isn't true is true, or vice versa, something that is true isn't true. That's what gaslighting is. Criticism and, you know, so putting somebody down and criticising their strengths and achievements, correcting them, their speech, their grammar, those kinds of things. You know, depriving them of sleep. So this is a technique that we do see. You know, people, you know, that's it. I've done with fighting tonight. I want to go to bed. I'm going to go and sleep in the spare room. And this person may like keep coming in and, you know, keeping the fight going for hours, and, you know, waiting till the other person just about falls asleep, and then, you know, coming back in and starting up again is something that we see. You know, emotional manipulation such as threatening suicide, or actually attempting suicide, or suggesting that something bad is going to happen if they leave you, or suggesting that something, you know, the children might happen to the children, or that they'll never see their children again. Those are all types of coercive control designed to keep that person in the relationship. So there's lots and lots of ways, and I could go on for another hour around all of the different types of coercive behaviours. There are literally thousands and thousands of them, and as I said, they are as unique as the two individuals in the relationship. So, you know, you have to get practiced at understanding, you know, what's the outcome that this person's hoping for. Are they telling me this information simply to share where they're at, or are they telling me this information in order to control what I'm doing, thinking, behaving, feeling? There's a great book that I'm going to show you. It's called Invisible Chains, and it's by Lisa Aronson Fontes, PhD. This book is a great book for overcoming coercive control in your intimate relationship. Definitely one of my favoured books, and it's definitely worth looking at and having a read of if you want to know more about coercive control. Going to leave it there. As I said, coffee shop therapy. Want to keep these really quite short and to the point. You can follow along on YouTube. You can follow along on LinkedIn and read the article. We obviously do a podcast as well on SoundCloud. All of those links can be found on our Facebook page. Obviously, you can follow along on Instagram as well. And if you've got any other questions or anything that you'd like me to do a Facebook Live about, please do either private message me or pop a comment below this, and I'll get to it one time soon. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and I'll see you next Sunday.